And good morning, Vaqueros. This is All In with Ali. I'm your host, Ali. It's it's currently 11:05 here in Edinburgh. It's nice and sunny, about 80 degrees, and we've been waiting for this weather to come back for a while. I hope you guys are enjoying it. It's not exactly jacket weather, but perfect to be out there in short sleeves and enjoy it. Anyway, welcome. We got a lot to discuss today, starting especially now that the regular season in baseball is wrapping up now. Let's talk baseball. Let's talk going ahead into the playoff picture. Let's start now in the National League. Padres and Dodgers just playing a series. Dodgers won last night, and then the Padres the night before. And what's been a series of incredible baseball, and what could very much be another playoff preview series. What I was impressed by is a lot of great baseball, a lot of moments. Ohtani with two go-ahead knocks last night, and then the night before, with Ohtani on deck, the triple play to end the game was just beautifully turned. That ultimately secured a clinch for the Friars. I think those two teams can make some noise in October. I mean, obviously, you talk about the Dodgers, you talk about the Stars in LA, and you talk about how good their pitching staff is, and then you could say the same about the Padres. You can talk about, Shohei Ohtani or Freddie Freeman, or on the other side, you got Tatis or Machado, and both teams have got guys up and down those lineups that can really make some noise. So I think we're seeing we saw some incredible baseball. Mets and Braves, they were scheduled to play, but with an incoming hurricane, the league decided to move the last two games to a doubleheader, which to me that doesn't really make a lot of sense the way they're scheduling it, especially if you're the New York Mets, because they have to travel to Milwaukee this week to play the Brewers for 3 games. Then they have to go to Atlanta to play that doubleheader the day before the playoffs start, mind you. Playoffs start on October 1st. The day before the playoffs start, and if they clinch, they have to fly out to, I think as it stands right now, they fly to San Diego to face the Padres for the wild card series. So it really didn't make any sense, and especially if they knew the hurricane was coming, they could have played the doubleheader the day or the night before, so the Mets would already be out of Atlanta before the storm comes in. Instead, they're staying there in Atlanta because they can't safely take off. Then they have to fly to Milwaukee, fly to Atlanta, and then fly to San Diego should they make the playoffs. And it's just a crazy scheduling mess, and it doesn't just affect the Mets, it affects the Braves too, because in those 2 games that got moved, they were scheduled to have their 2 best pitchers out to pitch against the Mets in what could ultimately decide the playoff future for these 2 teams. I mean, the Braves also had Chris Sale and Max Fried up next in their rotations to play the Mets, and they're not going to get that chance to will their teams into October because of because of the scheduling confusion caused by the league. So it doesn't, to me, it really doesn't make any sense why it was scheduled the way that it was. But that's ultimately baseball, and sometimes that sort of scheduling mess happens. Or even if they knew that the storm was going to be a factor, they could have moved it to a neutral site like they did with back in 2017 when Hurricane Harvey came into Houston. The Rangers and the Astros moved their 3-game series to Tropicana Field, which that's its own other separate thing with why the Rangers refused to swap home series with the Astros. That's another topic. That's another discussion for another day. But continuing on as it stands right now, the Diamondbacks are tied for the wild card spot with the New York Mets. So right now, those 2 teams are fighting for their playoff futures, and the Braves are a game behind both Arizona and New York. So it's very close in the National League. It's absolute chaos, and that's what baseball ultimately is. It's just chaos in between the lines of 9 innings. It's chaos in between the boring, and that's why we love it. If the season were to end today, the byes would be 1 and 2. The Dodgers get the first seed, Phillies at the second seed. Then the wild cards are the Diamondbacks would travel to Milwaukee as the 6-3, and then the 5-4, the Mets would travel to San Diego. Let's look over now at the National League. Astros clinched the American League West for the 7th full season and for the 4th year in a row. After starting 7-17, after starting 12-24, after being 10 games behind the Mariners in June, this team fought back and fought all the way to clinch that division title and earn themselves much-needed rest. As it stands, there's no chance the Astros would get the 2 seed. They're locked into the 3 no matter what. So this upcoming series they play with Cleveland, they're likely going to rest their starters. Yordan Alvarez, after picking up a knee sprain on Sunday, he's not going to travel with the team to Cleveland. So that's a good move by the Astros to have him rested and ready for the postseason. So yeah, what an incredible run that team went on this year, just to fight, despite the injuries, despite the slow start. You know, everyone committed, everyone just got to work. There was no panic in that clubhouse, and I think that started with Joe Espada. He didn't panic, and his team didn't panic either. And you know, you see the typical suspects for the Astros in their run. Altuve had a great year. Alex Bregman started slow, but then he got hot right at the right time. Kyle Tucker was hitting like an MVP before he got injured, but then once he got back, he made an immediate impact and helped the Astros win. And Yordan Alvarez, doing what Yordan Alvarez usually does, which is destroy any baseball that he sees. And then, the acquisitions the Astros got to get to where they are, the guys that that no one thought would make an impact, like Dana Brown gave up a haul for Yusei Kikuchi, and he's been absolutely incredible on the mound, like outing and outing. I think the Astros are 9-1 in games that he starts this year. And then, guys like Ben Gamel and Jason Hayward, who was the star of the clinch game on Wednesday night. And this team they've got the experience and they're looking to make another deep run, which, speaking as a fan of the Astros, I hope they do. And there's some tough teams here in the American League. Next up, Yankees and Orioles played a couple games, and Baltimore taking 2 from the Yankees in the Bronx. Right now, as it stands, the Yankees' magic number is down to 1, which meaning all they have to do is win a game or the Orioles lose a game, and the Yankees win the American League East. And that division race has been close. Then recently, Baltimore going on a slide to go down to 5 games. Right now, I believe they're 4 games behind the Yankees with that much left to play. So it's going to be great seeing what these 2 teams can provide. Both teams are already locks to make it to the playoffs. They're already clinched their spots. It's just a matter of securing the division and securing that top seed. Next up, the Detroit Tigers, red hot. I mean, they came out of nowhere. Nobody was expecting them to make the noise that they have this year. But, Tariq Skubal looks like he's going to win the Cy Young this year. He's been incredibly nasty on the mound for the Tigers. A.J. Hinch has just been a good manager for him this year. They're likely going to make a postseason berth. We haven't seen the Tigers in the playoffs in what feels like forever. Back in the days when they had Justin Verlander and Max Scherzer in their lineup, back when Miggy Cabrera was in his prime. I mean, those Detroit Tigers teams are fun to watch, but this team and the way they built up as an organization over the last few years, the moves they made in the draft to build their farm system, call those guys up, develop them, and then it sort of mirrors the way the Astros built their teams, draft smart, trade smart, and then build that core together. So we're gonna see a lot of interesting matchups if the season were to end today in the American League. Right now, the Yankees have the first seed, and the Cleveland Guardians have the second seed. So 1 and 2 are New York and Cleveland. The 3 and the 6, the Detroit Tigers, as it stands, would travel to Houston for the wild card series at Minute Maid Park. And then the Royals would go on the road and face the Baltimore Orioles. And the Baltimore Orioles have always had incredible crowds in the playoffs. But right now the Royals are kind of a bit on a skid recently. And so we could very well see the Detroit Tigers move up to the 5 and the Royals drop down to the 6 by the end of the year. Other teams to look out for in the playoff hunt in the American League rather. The Twins are 2 games behind the Royals, and the Mariners are 2.5 games behind the Royals for the final spot in the American League. The Tigers and the Royals right now are tied, both teams at 84 and 74 on the year. But the head-to-head has them at 5, is what decided the 5 and 6. So this weekend will be a huge series, huge games for both teams to decide playoff seeding, and that is what's going on this week in the MLB. So we're already getting to the best time of the year in baseball, playoff baseball. I love it. A lot of energy, a lot of excitement, and that starts Tuesday. We'll have more for you on next week's segment of All In with Ollie. Now, back to the now this message from Dr. Bailey and a music break, and we'll take you right back to All In with Ollie after these messages. Welcome back to All In with Ollie. Still here at the top of the hour, and I got some developments going on in basketball that I'd like to talk about today. First off, the Grizzlies announced that they will be retiring Tony Allen's jersey. They announced this the other day, and the reaction online it kind of surprised me a bit because a lot of people didn't exactly understand why his jersey got retired, but I'm gonna tell you exactly why in case you didn't know. I mean, Tony Allen, 6-time All-NBA defensive team, made the first all-team first defensive team 3 times out of those 6. I mean, he didn't exactly he was okay on offense, but where he really shined was on the defensive side of the court. I mean, Kobe Bryant said that Tony Allen was one of the best defenders he's ever played against, and to get that kind of praise, I think says something. I mean, Tony Allen used to give prime Klay Thompson nightmares. He used to have KD thinking about it all the time. Teams would scheme around Tony Allen in their attack. I mean, he was just absolutely locked down on defense, and I think congratulations to him. He deserves that accolade. And speaking of accolades, another thing I want to talk about announced just this morning. Derrick Rose announced his retirement from basketball today. And Derrick Rose, who had, I think, one of, if not the best rookie seasons we've ever seen in the NBA. I mean, he was the youngest player to ever win a league MVP, and he won it in a league that had that had LeBron James, Kevin Durant, and Kobe Bryant all in their primes. And to do that at such a young age is just incredible. I mean, that season was absolutely magic. And I mean, being left too long in that playoff game and that knee injury absolutely, it unfortunately changed the trajectory of his career. And I think if he didn't pick up that injury, we'd be talking about Derrick Rose as one of the greats and one of the all-time greats in this game, because he was just incredible. I mean, in his rookie season, he averaged 25, 7, and 4, and those are numbers that we consistently see LeBron put up today. I mean, absolutely incredible, and congratulations to Derrick Rose on an incredible career in basketball. We wish him all the best. And the next segment, we'll talk a little bit college football, talk a little bit of soccer as well. You're listening to Vaquero Radio, the Valley's student station. We'll be back after these messages. And welcome back to All In with Ollie, bottom of the hour here in Edinburgh. And we'll talk a little bit of college football. Last week, in a matchup I told you guys to tune into was the Tennessee-Oklahoma game. Just a quick recap of that. It was really all Tennessee throughout. I mean, they started off the first quarter hot, and Oklahoma kind of made a little bit of a run towards the end of it, but it was all Tennessee. A matchup I'd like to pay attention to this week is another SEC game. It's Georgia versus Alabama. I think I think it's going to be that should be a good one. It's always an exciting matchup when those two teams meet. And why I wanted to today is because I will be going off to Lubbock today, and I will be there on Saturday at Texas Tech for the Cincinnati TTU game. If you want more my thoughts on how that game went, just tune in next week, and I'll gladly talk about it. Let's moving on now into the next thing I want to talk about was Man United and their draw against Twente in the Europa League in soccer. I mean, it was just another disappointing match for Manchester United, a team that last year didn't really impress, and this year they're looking like doing more of the same. I mean, Eric Ten Hag after the game said something to the effect of, "This isn't us at full effort." But Eric, if this isn't full effort, can you show us what is? Because we haven't really seen that with you at the helm. I mean, as of right now, Man United is sitting at the bottom half of the Premier League table. They just drew their first match in Europa League against a team they were expected to beat. So when the full effort's coming, when is it coming, man? Let us know, and I'll gladly eat my words and say I was wrong about you. But until then, I don't know. I don't know what United is supposed to do in this case. I mean, it just goes to show I don't think Ronaldo was ever the problem at Manchester United. He never was. And Eric Ten Hag essentially drove him out of town, drove Jadon Sancho out of town, and it's just been an absolute mess. And United fans, hopefully you guys see that resolve. But, I mean, until then, we don't know what's going to happen. Next segment, we'll talk about the NFL recap last week, matchups to watch for Week 4, dishonorable mentions of the week, and on this day in sports history, be sure to stay tuned to All In with Ali after this message. Welcome back to All In with Ali, bottom of the hour here in Edinburgh. Let's recap Week 3 of the NFL season, starting with Ravens-Cowboys, and the Cowboys did it again. I'm not even a Cowboys fan. After this game, I was left absolutely dumbfounded. I mean, the Ravens have a good offense, and they scored 28 points. Which not a bad effort by the defense, but still you'd like to see a little bit more there. But the offense, oh my God, Dak Prescott has not looked good since the Browns game, but that was because he was torching an absolutely terrible Browns defense in Week 1. But then after that, just poor loss after poor effort, and how about them Cowboys, huh? How about them Cowboys? He kind of made a little bit of a run towards the fourth quarter, but that's just, another Dak drive in garbage time to sort of bring back some points that he lost there. And then also the Ravens, they kind of have a propensity for choking in the fourth quarter of games. They were up big, but the Ravens ultimately came out with the win here. And there's a lot of questions that need to be answered in Dallas right now. If you're a Cowboys fan, if your head coach Mike McCarthy right now is especially dumbfounded, because I never understood the hire of Mike McCarthy. And when the Cowboys were looking for a new coach, they had just fired Jason Garrett. You're thinking, you know what? Give them a little bit of respect for that. They fired Garrett. They finally moved on, but then only to go on and hire Mike McCarthy, a Packers fan saw this from a mile away. Anyone with a set of eyeballs saw this from a mile away. Mike McCarthy was carried by Aaron Rodgers most of his career, and then he goes over to Dallas, and it just hasn't worked out. Just the absolutely falling flat in the playoffs like they do every year, and then just losing games they shouldn't lose like they do every year. And every year you hear Cowboys fans say, "This is our year. This is our year." It hasn't been since the 90s, and I don't know if it ever will be. Next game I want to talk about, the 49ers dropping a game on the road against the Rams. The Rams usually have a lot of Niners fans go out to the stadium, and there was a lot of red at SoFi for that game. But the 49ers, inexplicably dropping another game in overtime, and they're really missing Christian McCaffrey. Brandon Ayuk has not looked good. Only 8 points in fantasy. He was supposed to be the wide receiver one. He's getting paid like a wide receiver one, but he hasn't performed like a wide receiver one, like we all expected him to at the beginning of the year. But Jawan Jennings, though, sneaky pickup for fantasy this week. He did receive the lion's share of the targets and the lion's share of the touchdowns. But the Rams, with another propensity for comebacks, like Matt Stafford did this all the time with Detroit, and he's doing it again in LA. And props to them because they've dealt with a lot of injuries, especially to their wide receiver core. No Cooper Kupp, no Puka Nacua. Half their offensive line is banged up, and still the Rams found a way to do it again. And they're putting together something so far this year, and I'm liking what I'm seeing out of LA. And they are going to look dangerous once they get their weapons back. Once Cooper Kupp returns from injury, once Puka Nacua returns from injury, Matt Stafford's going to have those reliable targets. They're winning without them, and I think they're going to keep winning with them. Next game, Vikings-Texans, and oh my God, this was a frustrating watch as a Texans fan. It really was. Laremy Tunsil, 3, not 1, not 2, but 3 false start penalties in a row as soon as the Texans were trying to put something together. They had just gotten into Vikings territory, and then Laremy Tunsil undid all of that in the span of less than a minute. And it was clearly not the Texans' day, and I know C.J. Stroud understands that. He said that, we got our butts kicked, so what? Move on. We got Jacksonville coming up. And I like seeing that from the Texans, but, this is just one of those games where nothing was working. I mean, the offensive line wasn't good. Jonathan Grenard had a revenge game against us with a couple of sacks. And the Vikings, though, props to them. They look good. Sam Darnold looks like he's going to be the quarterback, and I think J.J. McCarthy just got Trey Lance right in front of our eyes because they had drafted J.J. McCarthy, expecting him to either to develop behind Sam Darnold or having him take over the reins day one. And Sam Darnold, when McCarthy went down with injury, just took the reins and went with it. He's looked really good. I've seen some good quarterback play from Sam Darnold here, and I'm glad he's putting it together. He's got some legit weapons over there in Addison and in Justin Jefferson. Justin Jefferson's incredible as he always does. He was just always open, being a reliable target. He's got the speed, and I think the Vikings could potentially make some noise this year. They've looked really good. Saints and Eagles, that was a close one. Saquon Barkley breaking out for a run, for that long run that ultimately gave Philly the lead back. It was just a back and forth affair. If you're the Saints, just drop this and move on. And then Chiefs Falcons, another one I want to talk about. That false so that supposed penalty they should have called on Kyle Pitts right there to end the game for the Falcons. That ultimately wasn't called, pass interference. But the Falcons and the Chiefs do look really good, and I think the Falcons they're going to be fine, but the Chiefs, Chiefs doing what the Chiefs do. Some matchups for you to watch as we come around to Week 4 of the NFL season. Saints and Falcons, NFC South matchup right there. Both teams have had incredible starts to the year. Both teams have been surprising. I didn't think that either of them were going to be that good. I didn't think the NFC South was going to be a particularly impressive division, to be honest with you. But, I mean, Carolina's still in that division, so there's still a lot of unimpressive play in there. But the Saints and the Falcons have looked good to start the year, despite them both coming off losses. I think we're going to see an incredible duel between Derek Carr and Kirk Cousins. Eagles, Bucks, both teams also looking good. 2-1 teams right there, and that should be an interesting head-to-head. Another divisional matchup to keep an eye on: Vikings and Packers, and an NFC North showdown on Sunday. Like I said before about the Vikings, Sam Darnold's looked good. Their defense has looked great. And the Packers, playing without Jordan Love, mind you, they've played reasonably well, and so expect to see some more good play coming from there to keep an eye on for you in Week 4. Dishonorable mentions of the week this week. First, Colts and Bears, both teams ending up with a spot on this list because, my God, that was atrocious. Atrocious offensive line play from the Bears, first of all. Their line has just been getting beat every year. And I mean, yeah, both these teams have decent defenses. I think the Bears' defense is good, but it's just no O-line from the Bears. How can you expect Caleb Williams to develop behind that turnstile of a line? And then the Colts are not exactly getting good play from their quarterback, Anthony Richardson, either. He didn't have a good game here. Caleb Williams had a terrible game, and I did not understand once the Bears they got to the goal line, right? Getting ready to score. They ran was pretty much the same play for the first 3 downs, just run it up the gut with DeAndre Swift, run it up the gut with DeAndre Swift, run it up the gut with DeAndre Swift. Neither didn't work, so they tried, I don't know what they tried, but the offensive line just completely collapsed on 4th down, and more on DeAndre Swift, he did not have a very good game against one of the most suspect rush defenses. I mean, the Colts have a decent pass defense, but not a rush their rush defense hasn't looked good this year, and despite that, they're paying for an RB1, and they're not getting RB1 production from DeAndre Swift. So what we thought was going to be a good Bears team isn't really seeming so. The Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim, or whatever name this team has now, the Los Angeles Angels, the California Angels, it's the same team. The Angels playing the White Sox this week, who right now tied the record for most losses in the modern era by any team. They tied the expansion Mets with 120 losses. There's still a few games left to play, and I think that record does get broken. But the Angels dropping 2 games, not 1, but 2 games in a row against a terrible White Sox team is just not a great look. And last, and certainly least, for dishonorable mention of the week, is John Fisher, owner of the Oakland Athletics, or now the Las Vegas Athletics. If you didn't know, tonight is the last home game that will ever be played at the Coliseum for the Oakland A's. That will end many years of incredible history, and it's an absolute travesty to the game, an absolute disservice to the fans that this is happening, that the A's are moving to Vegas. John Fisher can say that he tried keeping the A's in Oakland, but he wanted the city to pay for it. He didn't want to pay a dime out of his own pocket. He's let so many free agents walk. He's let so many incredible teams just go away, like Matt Chapman, Marcus Semien. The A's have had some good runs under his tutelage, but that's in spite of him because John Fisher just hasn't spent any money on this team. And it's absolutely sad to see that so many years, so much history of incredible baseball in Oakland is coming to an end today. And it's, I think, because of John Fisher. So, it's gonna be a sad thing to see tonight. The Oakland A's playing in their final game at home at the Coliseum. And of the Coliseum, Fisher hasn't really, aside from, Mount Davis, but that was under the Raiders. Under John Fisher, there's not a lot of improvements made to the Coliseum. No, the public proposal to build a stadium at Howard Terminal, he was expecting the city to pay for most of it, and he didn't want to pay much out of his own pocket to do so. And John Fisher will probably go down, I think, as one of the worst owners in sports, right up there with Artie Moreno, the Angels, right up there with Art Modell, right up there with Bud Adams, and history's coming to an end in Oakland, and we'll have to wait and see how this next chapter of A's history is going to go. They're going to play in Sacramento for a few years. They're not even going to play in Oakland while they wait for their stadium to be built in Vegas. So, absolute travesty to see that. On this day in sports history, in 1981, Nolan Ryan pitched his 5th career no-hitter against the Dodgers in the Astrodome in a 5-0 win. 1993, Alan Prost wins his 4th F1 Drivers' Championship after finishing second at the Portuguese Grand Prix. And in 1996, Barry Bonds becomes the only second ever there have been more members of the 40-40 Club, and then Shohei Ohtani establishing the 50-50 Club this year. But Barry Bonds becomes the second member of the 40-40 Club on this day in 1996. Tune in next week, folks, for a recap of the Wild Card Series, for more recap of NFL, for On This Day in Sports History. Thank you so much for tuning in this week. This has been All In with Ali. Spread the word, folks. If you want to talk more sports here on Vaquero Radio, we're here Thursdays, every Thursday from 11 to 12. Thank you so much for listening. This is your host saying so long from Edinburgh. Have a great one, Vaqueros. Enjoy this weather.